This episode is sponsored by Echo. Hear clearly, care confidently.
Learn more at echohealth.com. That's EKO health.com. And use code JSP for $50 off any stethoscope until December 31st.
Just Some Podcast Media.
The thoughts and opinions on Just Some Podcast are of the hosts and guests and do not represent the views of organizations that employ them or they volunteer for. They are also not responsible for spontaneous black holes or nuclear wars that may occur. You have been warned.
Welcome, everybody, to another fun-filled, exciting, and short episode of Just Some Podcast. This is Tom.
This is Ben, and yeah, Tom, we're coming out with another blast episode because we're going to be a little bit busy this weekend.
I'd say a lot busy based on everything we've had to do so far.
Well, that's true. Yeah, we got the jalopy all waxed up and ready to head out to Nashville. To be probably tomorrow or today, depending on when you're listening to this, that we're actually headed to Nashville. So
yeah, for Nurses Podcon. Can't say enough about how excited we are to be part of it. There's a lot of great shows. If you are a healthcare professional, such as a nurse or anything like that, there are actually CEUs available. So there's a lot going on. It's going to be an interesting time.
It's definitely going to be fun. Hell, if you're there in person, you can probably come hang out with us at the bar afterwards or before or whatever you want to do. I mean, we've had several group Zoom meetings in regards to Podcon, and these are some really fun people. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like when we're all in person together.
Yeah. There's a lot of things planned, Ben. I don't know what else I can say right now. So I was going to mention, though, if you can't, but it's still something like you're not opposed to doing education from home, virtual tickets are also available. So please don't forget about that. If you're interested, I think you should go to goodnursebadnurse.com and use our code and
Just
buy
Some
a ticket.
Podcast.
Yeah, Just Some Podcast.
Well, Tom, I was just going to run through the list of the shows real quick, just so people that are, maybe they're on the fence and they didn't like, do I want to do, let's run through the shows that are going to be there. See if we can generate, push you over the line there that you do want to do this. Obviously, we're going to be there.
Well,
that in and of itself, pretty awesome.
Oh, awesome. That's what I was going to say.
Of course, Good Nurse, Bad Nurse, Tina, she's going to be there. She was kind of the one that kind of spearheaded all of this. So, I mean, of course, she's going to be there. And we've been on her show multiple times. She's been on our show. Fun girl. It's going to be a blast hanging out with her. Nurse Jer is I believe it's a new nurse that it kind of works through her podcast with students and things of that nature. Simple Nursing with Mike. That's where some of your CEUs are going to come from that day because of some of the stuff that he's doing. The one guy I'm really excited to get to sit down and bullshit with, Kevin over at the Art of Emergency Nursing. Again, we've had some interesting conversations through Zoom and everything else, and I think, we're all, you and I are both ER nurses by heart. So, we're obviously.
That's what I was going to say. You get three old time ER nurses together. Stories and lies are going to fly. So
100%. Up My Nursing Game is another podcast that's going to be there. They got some good stuff over on their show. The Neurodivergent Nurse. And I think we're probably going to end up having several of these people on our show over the next several months as well. And then Adriana over at Nursing Uncensored. And I believe that is uncensored for a reason, Tom.
Yeah, and she is a very talented and wonderful lady that we've got to work with so far. And again, I know all the names you've mentioned are just people that I'm excited to sit down, talk to myself, and get to watch them make their shows. It's going to be a great time.
Yeah, and one thing that we talked about, this group of podcasts, this Nurse Podcon, we're all very obviously very vocal because we do podcast every week or 2 weeks, or however, whatever their schedule is putting out. But, one of the things we push for is like advocacy. And so I think in some cases, we are the voice for the silent. And, sometimes, particularly our show, and I know the other shows, we're going to call a spade, and we're going to call bullshit when we see bullshit. And, like we just wrapped up an episode where we recorded with Tina talking about employee violence. And, I know something that's near and dear to your heart, but we're going to be the ones that are going to be the voice for those who don't have a voice, I think, and particularly within nursing and healthcare.
Yeah, and it's quite a core of people with lots of experience and lots of great points of view. And so I couldn't really honestly imagine a better group of people to actually talk. I'm not talking like just us. I'm just saying us as a whole group are just important, I think, for even those that don't listen to podcasts to understand that this group of people is a voice and can be used to help them out. And I just hope we can provide that someday. Like we actually come through. I hope we affect that change that we're looking for.
I think the group of us will. I think you'll start, hopefully start seeing things change. Maybe safer staffing ratios or better employee safety programs where there's less patient violence or less lateral violence. And, I think there's lots of things that we get very passionate about. And when you have that voice, then you can mobilize the numbers to get things moving, I think.
Well, I think it's beyond time for us to get some change that has been a long time coming and has just been exposed even more by the last couple of years.
I just had this image in my head, Tom. I know this, you do this frequently where you get like this little mini movie thing.
Yeah, it's like a cutscene. Yeah.
I see all of our podcasts kind of as like the Power Rangers where they all like come together to make like the big Megazord. That's what it's going to be right there.
But how did we end up the tail? Like everybody else is like,
I know
I'm the sword and I'm, Tina's like the head and like everybody else is like the arms and the legs. And they're like, hey guys, that's us in the back. We're the backpack. Yeah.
We need a tail. Like, oh yeah, we'll do that. Yeah.
Yeah. We're really useful for balance purposes, guys. We're important. So,
I mean, initially we were the scrotum. So I think we've moved up from scrotum to tail. So, I mean, I think
you couldn't even tell we were there. We were hid by that giant belt. So, my God, there is two of us. So, I mean, if you think about it, we are the most likely candidates to be hanging so it's symmetrical. You don't want to use up two whole other acts to make up the testicles when there's one act with two guys. I mean, it just makes sense.
We'll run that by Tina when we're in Nashville this weekend. Wow.
Yeah.
I just want to run through the names of the sponsors real quick. We're not going to go really in depth, but just know that they're the ones who kind of help get everything going with Nurse Podcon. You got CBD Stat, you got Samuel Miller University, you got Trusted Health, you have Stoggles, and you have Echo. So huge shout out to them. Huge thank you to them for getting all of us together to entertain the masses in person and online. Tom.
Yes, sir.
Before we get into the blast part of the episode, that initially this episode, full disclosure to everybody, this episode was initially going to just be talking about us, about Podcon, and trying to generate some last minute interest. GoodNurseBadNurse.com. Buy tickets. Use code JustSomePodcast. But something came out that I want to talk about, so we're going to talk about that to kind of make this a full blast episode. But before we do that, Tom, you really love your Echo 3M Littman Core digital stethoscope, right?
I absolutely do, Ben. The 40-time amplification, the noise canceling technology makes being able to hear all the important sounds that we're listening for and provide great teaching points to my students. It's just an all-around wonderful piece of equipment. I can't imagine not having it.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, as I've said before, I don't know that I'll ever be able to go back to a non-digital stethoscope after using this device. The way you can hear lung sounds and heart sounds so much clearer, and murmurs that you may have missed before, much more defined now. It's really amazing.
And Ben, they can learn more at echohealth.com. That's EKO health.com, and use promo code JSP for $50 off any stethoscope. And I really suggest that they do it soon because this deal ends December 31st.
Well, Tom, one of the things that we want to talk about in our blast episode tonight that I wanted to get your take on, and I suspect that you and I are going to have similar takes on this, but wanted to, I'm just going to read this. We're going to read this first and then we'll discuss.
Okay.
This was released yesterday, the November 16th. It's a policy statement. Dissemination of non-scientific and misleading COVID-19 information by nurses. And the statement reads, nurses are expected to be prepared to practice from an evidence-based, promote safe, quality patient care, use critical reasoning to address simple to complex situations, assume accountability for one's own and delegated nursing care. SARS-CoV-2 is a potentially deadly virus, providing misinformation to the public regarding masking, vaccines, and medications and or COVID-19 threatens public health. Misinformation, which is not grounded in science and is not supported by the CDC and FDA, can lead to illness, possible death, and may prolong the pandemic. It is an expectation of the United States boards of nursing, the profession, and the public that nurses uphold the truth, the principles of the Code of Ethics for Nurses, and highest scientific standards when disseminating information about COVID-19 and any other health-related condition or situation. When identifying themselves by their profession, nurses are professionally accountable for the information they provide to the public. Any nurse who violates their State Nurse Practice Act or threatens the health and safety of the public through dissemination of misleading or incorrect information pertaining to COVID-19, vaccines, and associated treatment through verbal or written methods, including social media, may be disciplined by their board of nursing. Nurses are urged to recognize that dissemination of misinformation not only jeopardizes the health and well-being of the public, may place their license and career in jeopardy as well. This was endorsed by the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, the Accreditation Commission for Education in Nursing, the American Nurses Association, the American Organization for Nursing Leadership, the National League of Nursing, the National League Commission for Nurses Education and Accreditation, the National Student Nurses Association, an organization for associate degree nursing. Whew, that was a lot to read.
That was.
But, as I told my wife when I was reading that to her, I think they're done messing around. The AMA came out with a very similar statement several months ago in regards to physicians. And now the vast majority of nursing organizations are coming together and saying, nurses, it's time to, if you're going to present yourself as a nurse,
correct,
then you're going to be responsible for what you say, what you put on social media, if it's misinformation.
And they should be. So first of all, this should have been the standard that we held ourselves to anyway. So it's an indirect point at a failure on ourselves as a profession that we even had to put the statement out. Okay. And I understand why they did it, but we should have already internally held ourselves to a higher standard. And I think there has been some failure on that. But aside from that, anytime all the major organizations get together, agree, and sign a piece of paper like this, yes, I think that is a clear sign and signal that the flexibility, guess I should say, that they showed people with allowing their opinions and not evidence while identifying themselves as a nurse, I think that time period is going to start drawing to an end, and I applaud it.
And weren't you saying before we got on the air that there was a physician?
So, yes. So I don't know if I want to name the state, but I know which state in particular that there has been a physician that has been stripped of his license to practice because of spreading misinformation in this exact same vein.
Right.
So I honestly think nurses want to be seen as colleagues to physicians. Well, there's the good and the bad come together on something like this.
And I think that's entirely what we should expect. You know, we, as it states in there, we are evidence-based in our education and our training in the way that we should act. And therefore, you have to follow the science. You have to follow the evidence. What this does not say, because here's what I think is going to happen, is you're going to see this on social media and people are going to get blown up and pissed off about it.
Yeah.
Is this, if you'll notice, did not mention anything about vaccine mandates, anything along those lines. What this is specifically talking about is misinformation like ivermectin and things like that have not been proven to be effective, but still gets passed around social media frequently.
Or just as bad are people that are purposely putting out bad information about the vaccine itself, COVID, they're like, I see it every so often because I try to avoid that type of information, but it's like, well, what they're not really telling you, yeah. So everyone's missing the point except for this one person they found a way to get it on YouTube. I really trust them. But, and let me address the who cares. Honestly, if you are a nurse and you do not believe that all the evidence-based facts laid out in front of you about this is true, and so therefore you are going to refuse to do your job, then I'm saying good riddance. You should be gone. It does not bother me at all. As a matter of fact, I applaud it. I think you should leave now. Now, that is not the same as having an opinion. If you don't like the vaccine or you don't think there should be mandates, etc., whatever your viewpoint is, that's okay. And you're allowed to say that all day long, however you want to. And again, I applaud and support that. But there is a line. There is a threshold. And that is when you are purposely stating a lie and representing it as a fact, misinformation, spreading conspiracy theories that undercut the validity of what is going on in healthcare right now.
Well, it reminds me of kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, that video by the chiropractor that got sent to me numerous times and wanted my opinion on it, where he's like, well, here's the real story about COVID-19. Yes. And then he's like, and you know what you can use to treat COVID-19? The shit that I sell. This stuff is perfect for it. It's like, okay. Yeah.
So the chiropractor, I also am quickly reminded of those 2 ER physicians.
Yeah.
That were bending the truth to put themselves in a beneficial light to try and sell more of their product. Or wasn't it they were trying to draw more business to their ER? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was like Express Care or something like that.
Yeah, and they were privately owned, and they're like, well, but our, and all of a sudden, yeah. So when that's something I also try and tell people when they ask me about information about the vaccine, etc. I'm like, look, there's lots of information out there, and you should get all sorts of different points of view, like read whatever you want. But when you go to a website that's named anti-COVID-19vaccine.com, don't expect to get unskewed information. Okay. Yeah. That's what I'm saying is going on. It's one thing to say, I don't like the COVID-19 vaccine. It's another thing to say that it's going to put a microchip in your arm. And so that's where,
and that's the
and
line.
If you can't figure out where the difference is, then also maybe you should re-examine your life choices, because maybe if you can't understand where that line is, that's the problem.
Mic drop from Tom right there. Seriously, this was just a short episode. We wanted to talk about the policy statement that came out because I thought that was pretty impressive. We wanted to make sure that you guys know about Nurse Podcon. I know we've talked about it every episode for the last 3 or 4 weeks, but tickets are still available in person online, goodnursebadnurse.com. Use code JustSomePodcast. Help us out over there, and we'll see you guys in Nashville. Tom, anything you want to say before we load up and head to Nashville?
No.
I will say one thing. As I think I alluded to it on social media, the episode that we're doing in Nashville is a specific episode for Podcon. We are not recording it. We're not releasing it out on our podcast channels. That is a private show just for them. So, and I think we got a pretty cool story.
Yes. It's another medical mystery. So
it is another medical mystery. It is related to the Nashville area. And like I said, it'll never see the light of day as far as being out on our podcast channels.
Ben, this episode is going to be our Once Upon a Time in the Shaolin for Just a Podcast. I see your confused look. Ben,
yes,
that's the famous album made by one of my all-time favorite rap groups, the Wu-Tang Clan, in which they made one copy of the album, and it was bought by that douchebag CEO. Do you not remember that?
No, that's damn impressive, though.
Yes, thank you. Well, Wu-Tang forever, motherfucker. Okay.
Apparently.
So, yes. No, the CEO that raised the drug of like the HIV drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
he
heard
bought that with some of the bonus money he got from, killing people.
Oh, well, that was
So
that story took a bad turn. Thanks, Tom.
But yes, one only. If you want it, you gotta come see it or listen to it or whatever. But
And
there it is.
Because we're talking about doing future podcons in 2022, 2023, whatever the case may be. Again, the episodes that we do there are going to be specific to that. You'll
What if Ben per se they were a Patreon?
Are we going to plug that?
Would they get that then? Ben would they get that? Would they be able to hear that? Would they be able to peruse a catalog just for them? Ben, would they?
Well, I guess we'll talk about
Ben,
Patreon, Tom.
Do you think, Ben, that people would want to do that? Ben, do you?
All right. Well, I guess we're ready to launch it. Cat's out of the bag, Tom. We're launching a Patreon page, and we're giving you exclusive behind-the-scenes access to our show. There's 3 different levels, and every level gets raw, unedited feeds from the show. So you're going to get us with all the screw-ups, everything. Like right now, we're currently at 25 minutes recording, and this will probably be about a 20-minute episode. So there's 5 minutes of screw-ups, things like that, Tom Googling stuff that will not make the final cut, but will be available over on Patreon.
Yeah, it's weird, Ben. We've had a lot of people say, you guys should start one and give us a lot of ideas of what we should do. And that's why we were like, hey, maybe we should explore this option. So
yeah, there's 3 different tiers. And as you move up in tiers, you get more stuff. We're doing live Q&As. We're going to do live chats. We're even going to do Patreon specific episodes where it's just that top tier of people that we're going to interact with directly. And as it says in the tiered explanation, if you want Tom wearing a Daniel Boone hat, drinking Goldschlager, rattling on about Vermont, that's the tier that you need to be in, because that very well could happen privately for you.
Yeah. I mean, who isn't standing in line for that? And it doesn't have to be specifically Daniel Boone or Goldschlager or Vermont. It's really up to you at that point. So,
but Tom, this is what I'm going to do for everybody. Once we're launching Patreon.
Buy a bottle of Goldschlager?
No. We're launching Patreon. We're going to do raw feeds. I'm going to do the raw feeds for the last several episodes that we've done. Get them thrown up on Patreon for you. The other thing I'm going to throw on there is a bonus for any tier. The episode that everybody wants the raw feed from.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Episode 14. The alcohol episode. That raw feed has never been heard.
Honestly, and it shouldn't. that should be quarantined by the CDC and burnt by the WHO.
It should be. But it's going to be available over on Patreon. If you want to hear all the shit that we had to cut out because we got way too intoxicated, it's going to be over on Patreon for you. This was all Tom's idea. So you can blame him for Patreon.
I just said, hey, maybe we should actually do it. It's pretty much, that was the Cheeto-esque lock strength that Ben exhibited before I pressed that door open. So what can I say? It's intriguing that people are that interested.
That was the catalyst for the fire that I needed. So yeah, if you want, as I describe it in the tier level, basically the episodes you're going to get over there are like if you're sitting in the room recording with us right now, you're going to get everything that guests get whenever they're with us. When we're like, hey, we need to re-record that part, or oh, we mispronounced that, let's go back and do that again. It's all going to be there for you on Patreon.
Well, let's see how this works out.
Yeah, we may lose listeners. We'll see.
Yeah, I bet that every week. I'm doubling down on that one. That's a hard 13. Call the pit boss. and inside joke that nobody else is going to get.
Hard 13.
Yeah.
We hope to see you guys in Nashville, and don't provide or don't disseminate misinformation. So don't do that. Wash your hands, wear your mask. Have a great week. We will see you this weekend.
Hey, everybody, stay safe out there and come see us.
Nashville.
Practice swearing just to pass the time. Lately I see why I am alone. I caught some road rage and I thought of you, and all the many times you say I should have known. Took a class so I could find my G, find mediocrity's the best that I could do. Meant to shower, but I slept all day. It takes everything to live the life I choose. Oh, what do you say? I screw up everything. And oh, what did you prove? Except there's only more for me to lose. Failure's not the same